When Queen Victoria purchased the Sandringham estate in 1862, she could not have imagined the scene which unfolded there this morning. At breakfast time, a number of unmarked police cars arrived unannounced, their task to arrest the younger brother of King Charles. Today is Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's birthday. He has spent most of it in police custody, answering questions. By 10 a.m. this morning, Thames Valley Police confirmed they had made an arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office and were searching addresses here in Norfolk and in Berkshire. At Royal Lodge in Windsor, where Andrew had been living until the start of this month, black vans were filmed entering the grounds earlier today. At midday, the first response from Buckingham Palace, and the statement was signed Charles R., meaning this was from the King himself. He spoke of how he had learned with the deepest concern of his brother's arrest and insisted a full, fair and proper process should follow in terms of the investigation. The King repeated he was ready to fully cooperate with the police, and then in the starkest way possible he wrote, "Let me state clearly, the law must take its course." And this afternoon, just as he pledged he would, the King continued with his public engagements.
Do you have any reaction to the arrest of your brother, sir?
Your Majesty, how are you feeling after your brother's arrest?
Today's diary did not change, but the questions on his arrival did.
Have you spoken to your brother, Your Majesty?
He had all his senior staff with him. He knows, just as they know, what a precarious moment this is. As for another of Queen Elizabeth's children, Princess Anne, her diary today included a visit to a prison. She didn't cancel it.
What's your reaction to your brother's arrest, Your Royal Highness?
Like her brother, she heard the question but didn't respond. So why did police launch a criminal investigation? It followed an assessment of the most recently released Epstein files made public by the US Department of Justice. Those files appeared to show emails from the then Prince Andrew to Jeffrey Epstein at around the time they were photographed in Central Park in New York. Police are investigating if confidential papers about business opportunities were shared by the then Prince and if that amounts to misconduct in public office. At the time, Andrew was a trade ambassador on behalf of the British government, a role which would have given him access to sensitive and confidential documents. The arrest is not connected to claims made by Andrew's accuser, the late Virginia Giuffre. Nor was it the result of new claims a woman was trafficked to Andrew for sex in 2010. Police are still assessing those. The Prime Minister, speaking before today's arrest, said once again, whatever information Andrew has should be shared.
Whether it's Andrew or anybody else, anybody who's got relevant information should come forward to whatever the relevant body is. In this particular case, we're talking about Epstein, but there are plenty of other cases. It is anybody who's got information relating to any aspect of violence against women and girls has, in my view, a duty to come forward, whoever they are.
And after the arrest, this response from the Foreign Secretary speaking to ITV News in New York.
There is a police investigation underway, and it is immensely important that that investigation can take its course. As the Prime Minister has said, no one is above the law.
The King was not told of his brother's arrest before it happened. He found out much like the rest of us. But any sensible analysis of the situation would have indicated this day might come. This is a seismic moment for monarchy. King Charles said today his family will continue in our duty and service to you all. Continuing as normal might be the ambition. It'll be very hard to achieve in practice.
Now, Chris, I know that the viewers can't see, but Canada Gate is swarming with the world's press to the left and to the right of us. And we can't overestimate just what a huge, momentous move this is.
Yeah, in fact, even I was surprised by how many press are here tonight, Charlene. Look, it's been drilled into members of the royal family for centuries that you just carry on, you keep the show on the road. But, you know, these are not normal times. In fact, they haven't been for the past few months. And today was most certainly the most abnormal of days. And I think when you hear, as I'm sure people have done today, comparisons like the last time a senior royal was arrested and kept in custody was King Charles I, in 1647, you do begin to realise just what a moment this is and just what a moment of jeopardy this is for the royal family. And discussions will be going on in Buckingham Palace tonight. Of course, they can have nothing to do with the police investigation. The King says he thinks they should go wherever they need to go with it. But what do they do? What do they do now?
All right, Chris, thanks very much. We'll talk to you a little bit later on in the programme. But for now, let's go to our correspondent, Neil Connery, who's over at Sandringham. Neil, can you describe to us exactly what it is that you've seen today?
A day of extraordinary developments. Let me just start with the geography of where we are on the Sandringham estate. Home Farm is about a quarter of a mile or so up this lane in the darkness you just might be able to make out behind me. That is where Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has been living for the last 2 weeks, and that is where this morning at around 8 o'clock officers from Thames Valley Police, backed up by Norfolk Police, carried out the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. We understand they gathered evidence there as well. Now, where he's been taken to, we do not know at this stage. There has been some speculation that it might have been King's Lynn. We don't know that. What has been clear during the day has been the growing media presence here at Sandringham, with journalists and crews from around the UK and around the world gathering to report this story. We are familiar with coming here to report on royal events. One thinks of the family gathering at Christmas, for instance, but today, well, today is clearly a day like no other. In terms of this community around Sandringham, there is a huge amount of respect and support for the royal family. Speaking to people today, some tell me a deep sense of shock at what has happened. Others say they feel surprised. They don't feel surprised by the turn of events here. We are here this evening waiting to see when and if Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor returns here this evening. Previously, he has strenuously denied any wrongdoing in terms of his relationship and his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein.
OK, Neil, thanks very much. Let's talk to Ellie Pitt now, who's at Royal Lodge at Windsor. Ellie, what's been happening there?
Charlene, we've seen a mix of plainclothed and uniformed police officers here coming through these gates today in a range of police vehicles, including 2 large vans. The busiest time of day was between about 12:30 and 3 o'clock, when police vehicles were coming and going almost every half or an hour or so. Now, this is clearly more activity than usual, but people living nearby have become almost used to Royal Lodge near Windsor becoming a focal point of media attention, while Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's relationship with Epstein has been under scrutiny. It's also perhaps no surprise that Royal Lodge has been the focus of the police search and investigation today, because the 30-room mansion is where Andrew called home for 18 years, and crucially, he lived here for a large portion of that time that he was trade envoy. And of course, it is his behaviour during the time that he held that role that is why he has been questioned by police today. Now, he left Royal Lodge earlier this month to move to Sandringham, but we understand some of his belongings have been left here. And on that note, earlier today, we also saw a fine art conservation company's van leaving Royal Lodge. It seems traces of Andrew and his time spent living here at Royal Lodge have been inspected and in some cases removed today.
OK, Ellie, thanks very much. Well, today's arrest will be a huge humiliation for the former prince, but there could be worse to come. Andrew is also facing other police investigations over his friendship with Epstein. Here's our UK editor, Paul Brown.
P's and P's are all in the green. Fuel is sufficient at 500 kilograms.
From fighting in the Falklands to fighting for his freedom, how did Andrew fall quite so far from prince to police suspect?
He's also known as Action Man 2.
During his youth in the military, he had a glowing royal reputation. Now a criminal one is a possibility. His arrest relates specifically to his time as trade envoy and whether he abused his position for his own gain. That is separate to any accusations about the abuse of women in association with Jeffrey Epstein. It was this photo with Virginia Giuffre which created a very different royal image, hardly improved by the Newsnight interview that followed.
Do you remember her?
No. I have no recollection of ever meeting her.
But after eventually settling out of court with Giuffre, still Andrew retained a place at Queen Elizabeth's side, though stripped of some of his titles. Last year, his brother removed the rest, as well as his home at Royal Lodge.
This is just an extraordinary fall from grace. Here was the man that was born into wealth and privilege, a Royal Naval officer, decorated, and now he's been languishing in a police station all day today on his 66th birthday, answering questions.
And even the sight of today's police presence does not do justice to the scale of this scandal. So far, the investigation into the Epstein files has drawn in 10 police forces and agencies. It was Thames Valley Police who made the arrest today over claims of misconduct in a public office. They're also assessing separate claims that a woman was trafficked to have sex with Andrew. Norfolk Police, which covers Sandringham, says it's reviewing documents in the Epstein files, while the Met Police are looking into Andrew's close protection officers, as well as investigating claims about Lord Mandelson. They're being supported by Wiltshire Police. Essex, Bedfordshire and West Midlands are all looking into private flights chartered by Epstein through their airports in their areas, while Surrey is seeking information about an allegation of human trafficking and sexual assault in the mid-90s. All forces are being coordinated by the National Police Chiefs Council and the National Crime Agency. No serving officer will ever have interrogated a royal before.
They could have invited Andrew in for an interview. They could have done it by a solicitor, but they chose not to. They chose to make the arrest. It then gives them the power to search the property he was in Sandringham, but all the other properties that are connected with him. So they'll be seeking computer equipment, laptops, mobiles.
If Andrew's charged, if he's found guilty, having spent most of his life as His Royal Highness, he could spend the rest in the depths of prison. Paul Brand, ITV News.
Well, today's events have raised more unwelcome questions about the King and the royal family's handling of the scandal, and it puts them under more pressure for greater accountability, as our correspondent Sergio Caria explains.
The monarchy has weathered scandals before, but Andrew's arrest has plunged it into a new crisis, a defining test for the King to contain the fallout and safeguard the future of the crown.
King Edward VII has ceased to reign over Great Britain and the British Empire.
History shows a pattern when royal controversy strikes. In 1936, the abdication of Edward VIII became a constitutional crisis. The royal family acted decisively, keeping Edward and Wallis Simpson out of Britain, drawing a firm line to protect the institution. After Diana's death, public anger forced a change of tone. The late Queen addressed the nation.
I want to pay tribute to Diana myself.
Eventually acknowledging the mood and steadying the institution. And in 2020, Harry's departure exposed deep family divisions, managed but never fully resolved.
This is a crisis like no other. To have a member of the royal family, yes, not a working royal, but the King's brother arrested is quite remarkable and something that we've never seen before.
Now, with fresh developments, scrutiny is intensifying. MPs once cautious have been speaking out, with calls to remove titles, questions about Andrew's residence, even suggestions of parliamentary scrutiny, all reflecting a wider shift, a public less deferential and more demanding of accountability. The pressure is visible. Prince William facing questions during a visit to Saudi Arabia.
To what extent do you think the royal family has done enough around the Andrew and Epstein issue?
The King heckled on a walkabout.
Charles, how long have you known about Andrew and Epstein?
Everything they now do is going to be overshadowed by Prince Andrew, and I think at the very least we can expect over time that we are going to have to see, and there will be calls for greater transparency in the institution of monarchy, a public institution that has been shrouded in secrecy for so long.
For the royal family, this is the biggest test in generations. raising profound questions for both Andrew and the monarchy. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
Well, our royal editor Chris Shipp is back with us. I mean, as Sejal just said there, they've been through storms before, but this is something very different.
Yeah, and it is a reminder that there have been ups and downs with the royal family throughout its history. And if you often think about the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, most people would say that she didn't put a foot wrong. Well, one time people generally agree that she did was after the death of Princess Diana. Hugely unpopular moment for the royal family. And yet I'm always surprised when you find out, just a few months later when she had a wedding anniversary with Prince Philip, her husband, people were cheering and they'd kind of all forgotten about what had happened just a few months before. So they can get through things, but this is of a different order. As we mentioned just a few moments ago, when you think the last senior royal to find themselves in police custody was King Charles I, you do start to see why this is of a different order. But you have to say this has been a long time in the making, and we're talking about missteps that perhaps the late Queen made. Maybe historians of the future will say, well, perhaps she could have done more when it came to the then Prince Andrew.
And it does put the King under a little bit more pressure to get this right. And so, talking about that, what do you make of his statement today?
Do you know what? We've had a few statements, haven't we, recently, and they've all come from Buckingham Palace, or they've come from a spokesperson for Kensington Palace. I mean, the first thing that I saw when I saw that statement this morning was the, Charles R. Rex, the King, at the bottom, which make this a personal statement. That's what made it very different. And he couldn't have been clearer. It is that, my brother has been arrested. Yes, I was shocked by that. Yes, I didn't find out about it. But the police must be allowed to do what they have to do. In other words, nobody, the King said in that statement, including my younger brother, is above the law.
OK, Chris, thanks very much. Well, myself, Chris and Lizzie have recorded a special episode of Talking Royals, analysing all of today's developments regarding Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's arrest. You can find it on our Talking Royals YouTube channel now. Just use the QR code which is on the screen right now. Our programme tonight is dominated by the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Police officers arrived at his home on the Sandringham estate, and the former prince was held on suspicion of misconduct in public office. It relates to allegations that he may have passed on information to Epstein when Andrew worked as UK trade envoy. Officers have spent the day searching addresses linked to Andrew, including his previous home in Royal Lodge in Windsor and at Sandringham. In a statement, the King expressed his deepest concern at the extraordinary events. He said authorities would have full support and that the law must take its course. Well, in the United States, the family of the late Virginia Giuffre said Andrew's arrest showed that no one is above the law, not even royalty. There are also further calls for the former prince to give evidence about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein before Congress. Here's our US correspondent, Dan Rivers.
An unprecedented arrest in Great Britain this morning.
Major breaking news that we're following at the top of the hour.
There is only one story dominating the news in America.
The shocking royal arrest.
The partial release of the Epstein files here has led to the first arrest not in the United States, but on the other side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, the guy we used to call Prince Andrew, we now call him Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The ex-prince has reportedly been arrested.
I respectfully decline to answer this question.
Andrew is the first person detained since Ghislaine Maxwell in connection with Jeffrey Epstein, not for sexual abuse and trafficking, which he always denied, but for the sensitive information allegedly exchanged with the paedophile. His interactions with Virginia Roberts Giuffre are contested. The prince denied ever meeting her or sexually abusing her. Today, her family told me they welcomed his arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
Him being arrested may not have been for the direct reason of sexual assault or for my sister, but we have to acknowledge that we wouldn't be at this stage without my sister and the brave survivors that are coming forward. And we will keep going. We will not stop until justice is served.
This is the very first thread that we can begin to really pull that is going to unravel everything else. And so we hope that by them opening up this investigation, uncovering, going into discovery, going into the files, we hope that they seize some documents from the files themselves and we're able to see further charges come. We know she's watching from above and just, she's dancing today.
No one is above the law.
Rena O, another Epstein survivor, says the UK is leading where America should follow.
The UK is doing a much better job. They're being more proactive and, you know, they're taking action, immediate action. Whereas here in the US, they're just avoiding accountability. They're in denial. I think for the other survivors, including myself, I'm getting a sense of relief that something is happening, even to someone who is a former royal, because this sets an example to all of us that, you know, there will be justice.
One member of Congress who has been leading calls for Andrew to testify before his committee probing Epstein's crimes has renewed his demand for the royal family to cooperate.
I'll come to London if he wants. I'll come wherever he wants. But my concern is that he keeps hiding from us. He keeps dodging our questions and our inquiries. And now he's getting arrested in the UK. So I hope that the pressure on him to come talk to us will get to a place where he does agree to talk to us in some form, because the victims want that too.
Do you think the king needs to instruct his brother to cooperate with your committee?
I would want the king to instruct his brother to cooperate. I would want everyone around Andrew to instruct him to cooperate with us, because it's the right thing to do. It's what the victims want, and it's also the best way to clear his name.
Andrew's arrest hasn't quelled the demands for him to testify here in the United States. If anything, it has intensified them. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Washington.
And for more on the day's dramatic developments, I'm joined by our royal editor Chris Shipp once again, but also by royal author Catherine Mayer. I'm going to start with you, Catherine. Thanks so much for joining us on this rather cold Thursday evening. There's been a lot of talk about the decision-making of the late Queen, and some have said that if she had been a bit bolder with her decision-making, then perhaps this would have gotten to this stage. What do you make of that?
It's true. I mean, the irony of where we are is that the late Queen didn't see any difference, any gap between protecting the monarchy, which she saw as her duty as monarch, and protecting her son, which she saw as her duty as a mother. She thought those two things were aligned, and I think what we're going to see is perhaps historians going back and looking at that a bit differently. You know, it's very easy with the benefit of hindsight now. There's been the huge dump of Epstein documents and everything to see why it unraveled. But nevertheless, you know, this was a problem that, more than a problem, that has been a long time in the making. Everybody in palace circles knew about concerns, you know, and this is one of those things, it could have been stopped. But also the question is, if you're trying to protect your son, protect the monarchy, at whose expense? You know, so it's not only the damage to the monarchy, you know, we always have to remember with the Epstein story that the victims are at the centre of it.
Exactly.
You know, I remember standing here actually on the day or the evening that the late Queen said Andrew, there's still a prince then, was stepping back from his role as a working member of the royal family. That was big news. But you think where we're at now, we've now got that former prince right now under police custody, being questioned. I mean, I don't think any of us would have thought that perhaps it would have ever got to this stage, and today it did.
And, you know, the whole ethos of the late Queen was that you don't complain about anything, you don't give statements about stuff, and then today we get that statement from the King. And, you know, in no uncertain terms, you knew where he stood, and he was very bold in the way that, and very frank in the way that he wrote that statement.
He was, and I'm not criticising it, but the thing is that they're all at a point where they have no choice. You know, they're being carried on the tide of events. As king, he is the fount of justice. You know, so he absolutely had to do this. The question is where they go from here. You know, and also because they don't know what's going to happen. So they are, you know, every time, all three of us have stood here many, many times before for big royal occasions, but nearly all of those were choreographed. people behind the scenes had thought about what the next run of events was going to be, what the optics would be. This is out of their control.
No one knows what's coming next.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before, haven't we, in terms of the fact this is completely outside of their control. You know, those 3 million files being dumped, they had to go, the information was released as we all got that information. There is nothing that they know that we don't know. We all know everything thus far, and that, as you say, is unprecedented.
Yes, and I think, as Catherine's right to say, history, so hindsight is a wonderful thing, and perhaps if the Palace could have seen where we were at in 2026 when they were looking at the situation in 2019, shortly after the Newsnight interview, perhaps they would have made different decisions then. But we are where we are, and I think Catherine's right to say this is totally out of the Palace's control. The police are going to go wherever they need to go in terms of this investigation, and they won't have any control over that.
And you had previously before travelled with the then Prince Andrew when he was working as a trade envoy.
I think I might be the only journalist who ever accompanied him on a full trade envoy trip. I went to Beijing and Shanghai with him in 2004, and it was really interesting because it was obvious then, they were trying to find a role for him. And in terms of what benefits that he brought to it, yes, he could convene a room full of people, but he was a fish out of water. He actually said to me at one point, I wished I could have been a plumber and fixed things. And I think maybe the royal family might be wishing that they had sent him to plumbing school.
Well, we'll see what happens next, but as we always reiterate, that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has always denied any of the allegations. Well, Catherine and Chris, thank you very much. For our top story, the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, our royal editor Chris Shipp is back, and you've got an update, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm sure people might have heard enough of my voice in the last hour, but we think we've got some news, and that is that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has been seen leaving a police station in a place called Aylsham. It's just north of Norwich in Norfolk, not that far from Sandringham. It appears that's where he was spending the day being questioned. There is a photograph, we believe, of him in the back of a car that was driven away from that police station at speed. I'm just checking out, we haven't heard from Thames Valley Police, the ones leading this investigation, whether or not he's been charged, released without charge, we don't know. But as we understand it tonight, he has been released from police custody. I just don't know. I can't tell you right at this moment in time what the conclusion of today's police questions were.